So this is how you turn a bad fortune into a good one. In Qimen Dunjia, business, wealth, and money are represented by a symbol called shengmen, shengmen, or live door. Let's look at the chart. Looking at this chart, this person has a Fanyin Chart with the day stamp of Ren Shui. And this Ren Shui is seated in both the wood and the metal palaces. So having a Fanyin Chart means that this person's character and motivations throughout his life will bounce between these two palaces. It will just go back and forth. So when we are looking at this chart, we need to consider the relationship of these two palaces and his wealth palace. And his wealth palace is located in Palace 9, where shengmen is. Shengmen represents wealth, represents business, represents money. So at first glance, this chart doesn't look very good because his wood palace here is producing fire palace, which means that the pursuit of wealth or business or being an entrepreneur is a common theme throughout his life. But at the same time, these pursuits from fire melt his other self, which is metal. So this feels like a bad cycle. But this person, he is very passionate and he is very sure of his calling, and he's starting to make moves and putting in the work to build his future, and he believes in himself. So we want to help him. How do we do that? So let's first solve the melting problem. Fire melts metal. But there's an element between fire and metal, which is earth. So we have to introduce earth into this equation so that the fire from his business will produce earth, and then the earth will produce his metal back again. Next, if wood keeps producing fire, then wood doesn't have enough energy for himself. And then in real life, this translates to being listless, procrastinating, or totally just dropping out. So we need to introduce water. So this water will then feed the wood, which will then feed the fire, which will then feed the earth, which will then feed metal, which will then feed water, which will feed himself. And then this is a more balanced equation on paper. So, great. Now, how do we translate this into real life? Well, first, earth. Earth is immovable. It represents stability. It contains nutrients that keeps plants alive, so it is nurturing. It is also slow. Patience. Implies patience and practicality. Earth is actually also represents money. Okay, next, water. These are the two elements that we need to add. So water, what does water represent? Water represents knowledge. What else does it represent? Adaptability. You put water into a cup, it becomes a cup. You put it into a bowl, it becomes a bowl. That's what Bruce Lee said. Water can be calm, it can be ferocious, and water, like earth, is also nurturing. Symbolizes intelligence and wisdom. Great. So now that we have all these in place, how do we solve this problem? What can we deduce from all that? So first, if this person wants to succeed in whatever he wants to achieve in his business, he has to have patience. He has to build something stable with long-term plans. He cannot be thinking about fast money. It won't work for him. In his chart, there's no fast money. And as long-term plans go, he has to be adaptable and be patient. Also, he has to constantly be learning water knowledge. Constantly be adaptable and constantly be improving his systems, his business model, and improving himself as well. So with these points, this person, if he wants to build this business and be successful, this business has to be people-oriented, it has to have a long-term plan, and he has to keep constantly be learning and adapting his business model to improve himself and his business. So That is how we turn a bad fortune into a good one. 福星高照。